Hello and welcome to the live event by Force 13. I'm Strat here today. We're looking at Western Pacific activity almost completely. 3 active systems, 1 remnant, multiple invests around. It is really active today. Right now on the screen, courtesy of David, we have Hector over its lifetime. The storm's now rapidly weakening and crossing into the Western Pacific. How you doing today, David?
I am keeping up with all the activity, and it's been very, very busy, especially with Hector now over here in the Westpac.
Yep. And good news, everyone. Nathan is going to be back tomorrow. Force 13 HQ internal operations will be up and running again within the next 24 hours. He left his vacation today. He will be back soon. You'll get even better updates than we can provide.
Well, the Strat, it's been an experience. I look forward to having Nathan back, and considering your effort with the live streaming, it's been successful in my updates. And to our viewers at this point in time, your support has been outstanding. But we have Tropical Storm Hector, currently located at 852 nautical miles northwest of the Johnson Island. He's tracked northwest at 17 knots over the last 6 hours. Animated enhanced infrared satellite imagery shows that limited deep convection to the northwest of the low level of circulation center has begun to flare up over the past several hours.
Yeah, I've noticed that in satellite imagery earlier today. The system was almost completely devoid of convection. It had a pretty significant burst earlier today that's starting to fade off right now. You can actually see some of the most recent frames here in the satellite imagery that David is providing.
And Strat, the activity is to the
northwest in the most part. It's stuck
yeah.
in that quadrant really. Shear's definitely taken a toll on the storm. I'll actually, if you keep that up, I'll switch over to my tab quickly and pull up. Here's the wind shear map mode. Hector's going to be the cloud mass closer to the right side of the screen here. It's currently under about 15 knots of wind shears to 20 knots. It's been under this for over 2 days now. System's rapidly weakened. Almost 100-mile-an-hour sustained winds weakening within the past 2.5 days. So 2 days ago or 3 days ago, I made an update on Hector where it was at 140-mile-an-hour sustained winds. Right now, it's at 50, I think, right? That should be one of the first JTWC updates. We can actually check that right here. Their warning graphic, they say it's actually at 45 knots. They're saying it's only at 45 miles an hour. So I'm wrong when I say that. Storm's drastically weakened.
The vertical wind shear, I'm just reading the information from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. Vertical wind shear moderate, 15 to 20 knots. Sea surface temperature remains favourable, 28 degrees Celsius. And they've tagged, well, they've got Hector's Tropical Storm 10E, tracking west-northwest along the southern periphery of a subtropical ridge located to the north.
Yep. Someone asked actually, we're looking at Hector's intensity really rapidly weakening. It's interesting to see if you look at the very bottom left screen, the model. This is the most recent GFS run. It actually shows Hector re-intensifying briefly before weakening. That's the most recent GFS run. I can pull it up on my computer screen right now to give a wider view once it loads up. Let's see if it actually... Yep, here it is. So let me pull it up quickly. Alright, we're back here. Here's tropical tidbits. GFS model run 18Z for Hector. This is 18 hours from now. It shows as a tropical depression. Strengthens it all the way back up to 51 knots at 36 hours before slowly weakening it and bringing it back to tropical depression strength by 84 hours. And dissipating it from there on out. The HWRF, it plays somewhat of a similar role. It weakens it slowly, keeps it at tropical storm intensity for the next few days. Stall weakening as, it's anticipated at this point that the system will be entering an area of lower wind shear, but sea surface temperatures are going to continue to cool over the coming days, and that's going to ultimately impact the system to the point where it can't recover.
And Strat, just adding to what you just said, the Joe Typhoon Warning Center indicates a vertical wind shear will slightly weaken over the next 24 hours and will allow Hector to intensify slightly to 45 knots. However, after the 24-hour intensity will gradually decrease as Hector will begin to experience increased vertical wind shear. However, as mentioned, sea surface temperatures will remain favourable over the next 48 hours, and Hector will track more northerly as it rounds the western edge of the steering ridge. Dynamic model guidance is in good agreement.
Yep.
And within 72 hours, sorry mate, we'll begin to track northeasterly along the western edge of the steering ridge, north of the steering axis, and by 96 hours, an approaching shortwave trough will accelerate Hector to the northeast. There is a large spread in model guidance for this portion.
Yeah, here's just the JTWC track forecast for that. We can actually switch over to here to show the model spread after 72 hours. You can see it's tightly clustered until then. They all hint at the general same direction, turning north and then north-northeast or northeast. It's just, how extreme that turn is or when it happens. You see the Tab D's way further out left and the Cody is significantly further right. So that's where they really talk about the model spread increasing from 96 to 120 hours. And David also has the spaghetti chart up as well. Let me pull that up for you guys. I actually saw a question earlier. Always leave your questions in chat, guys. We'll be sure to answer them. Asking what kind of media encoders we use. I know it's kind of off topic, but this is a more laid-back stream today, so I just wanted to go over that quickly. I use OBS, Action, and Adobe Premiere Pro. What do you use, David?
I use OBS for the broadcasting. I have Movie Plus X6, and I've upgraded to the Magic range.
Yep. And now we're through with that. I actually want to take a look at Tropical Storm Bebinca that formed yesterday. It's intensified more than I initially forecast, and it's a pretty dangerous storm, all things considered. I'll pull up quickly. This is the satellite animation of it. The center's actually going to be east of Hainan Island, but the biggest concern right now with this storm is this giant burst of convection, which consists of a large mass of negative 80-degree cloud tops. That's, this whole system's been stalled out here for a week now, and if we go over to the JTWC's homepage, here's the track for Bebinca over the next 5 days. It's expected to remain in this area for at least another 3 days to 4 days. So, rain has obviously been a huge problem with this storm. Even though it's not the strongest system, it's actually forecast to have peaked right about now at 45 miles an hour. Rain has been a really big problem for this region.
I'm just getting my bearings. Sorry, Strat.
Oh, it's all good. So, here's another split screen of some of the computer models. The HWR is kind of interesting. It separates it and brings it, stalls it and brings it eastward, which is really something we haven't seen with this kind of storm compared to the other models. Most of them stall it for a few days and then bring it off to the west, back through southern China into northern Vietnam, where Sontin came in last month. So, there's still a problem with that.
I've got the technical information from the JTWC Tropical Storm 20W Bebinca, located 117 nautical miles south-south-west of Hong Kong, tracking east-south-east at 2 knots. It's virtually stationary. Animated enhanced infrared satellite imagery depicts flaring deep convection, which is obscuring the low-level circulation. Unfortunately, at this point in time, there's been no recent microwave passes to assist with the placing of the low-level circulation. An 89 gigahertz image shows a poorly defined low-level circulation just west of the deepest convection along the eastern edge of the system. The system lies in an area moderate to strong 25 to 35 knots easterly vertical wind shear, moderate strong equatorward outflow offsetting the strong
I'll
vertical
bring that up
wind.
right here, actually the wind shear map mode. You can tell it's closer to the bottom left here where Bebinca is. It's an area of 30 knot wind shear, even though, that's why you see on the satellite imagery the convection's being stripped westward from the storm, especially that big burst of convection that's going to start moving into northern Vietnam as daytime continues to grow in that region. Keep going.
And Tropical Storm 20W, we keep in mind the direction east-southeast, and drifting in that direction, it's going to encounter a weak steering environment due to the pressure of a large low pressure system associated with Tropical Storm 20, remnants of Tropical Depression 18W, and Invest 98W.
Yeah, it's in the past few days there's been a big question mark with this because this particular low pressure areas created a lot of uncertainty with storms. It impacted Yagi. Leepi was expected to be very weak, and its impact changed, and Leepi actually became a typhoon. It's actually undergoing a weakening process right now. I'll pull up Leepi's satellite imagery briefly just to show you guys that. Storm has deteriorated considerably. It's expected to pass through southern Japanese island as a tropical storm, but not really last much longer than that, as shear from this broader low pressure area has really started to take a toll in the system. And then we have Bebinca being sheared by this as well, and the question mark of what's going to come out of it, because a lot of the models are trying to form a system out of this low pressure.
And I've been keeping an eye on the International Space Station flyovers of the region, and there is quite a wide blanket of cloud. However, Tropical Storm 20 Strat is forecast to remain quasi-stationary over the next 24 hours under the weak steering environment, and after 24 hours the steering wedge over eastern China is expected to strengthen and push 20W onto an accelerating westward track over the next 72 hours.
Yeah, and let's take a look at some of the computer models quickly, just in general, just to get a sense of what they're saying in terms of Bebinca. Here's the model area right now. Here's Hector. Here's Leepi, and then here's Bebinca down here. Yagi is somewhere in this region in China. And you can see we go ahead, 30 hours. It actually, just keeps in the same area, closer to being inland to China. And then you can see it actually move westward. Here would it be? It'd be right around here. If you look pretty closely, you can see a little bit of green showing the tropical storm sustained winds. That moves it westward into northern Vietnam and dissipates it as Another system forms behind it, becomes a typhoon east of Japan, and similar things happen. If we go to the Euro, I want to see what it says for this as well. This is right now. Keeps it in the same area for the first day. By day 2, brings it westward into China. Day 3 brings it towards northern Vietnam. Day 4 into Vietnam. It's interesting. It actually develops this broad area of low pressure that's steering Bebinca, Leepi, and Yagi as well. It develops into a full-fledged tropical cyclone just south of Shanghai, and then moves it inland as well, which is interesting to see because it actually brings it further out again, keeps it alive. Considering Shanghai's been hit by a lot of storms in the past 2 months, it's interesting to see them say that.
And Strat, they're definitely not in the clear because just reading a little bit more of the advisory on Tropical Storm Trenny, which is to the west of Invest 98W, and Yagi is already on land. And as I mentioned just briefly in my update, the Chinese authorities had to evacuate 200,000 Westerners, and they had to call back to port 21,000 fishermen. So that's what Yagi has done. However, with Tropical Depression Trenny, there is a possibility that it's going to intensify further over the Leepi, oh no, I haven't got that right, Peninsula, and will emerge into the Gulf of Tonkin within 60 hours.
Oh, that's what that area is. Okay, well,
The Gulf of Tonkin,
all right.
a vertical wind shear will decrease as the storm picks up speed, interface with the wind, with the shear vector. Very warm sea surface temperatures, high OHC will contribute to the intensification. The system will then accelerate westward and make a second landfall between 72 and 96 hours along the northeast coast of Vietnam.
Yeah, and we can actually show that. Here's the map graphic again. You can see it stalls it in the same area for 2 days, then moves it westward, has it make landfall on that southern Chinese peninsula, and then move and make landfall in northern Vietnam near Hanoi.
And I'm just going to bring up the Vietnamese weather site, and they actually have the system deepening. They have it peaking, I think, about 60
kilometers
knots.
is what they're saying. 60 knots. That's surprisingly
okay.
intense.
They have it at 20 decibels, 7 degrees north, 113.5. They have it as a tropical storm, 69 kilometers an hour, and they have it peaking Thursday, 80 kilometers an hour.
That is surprising.
So they're going with the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre that it's going to deepen further. And Strat, I have the current chart.
Oh, well, 80 kilometers an hour is only 50 miles an hour. That's what the storm is at right now.
Yeah.
So, that makes a lot more sense. And there's the Vietnamese map forecast for the storm as well. They actually bring it a bit further north than what the JTWC is saying.
So they're saying second landfall, there's that peninsula.
Yep, they bring it a bit further north. That
must be the Gulf of Tonkin. I think
that is the Gulf of Tonkin.
Right, and then the second landfall, Hanoi. So that's where. Oh, what was the last system?
Suntin.
Yes, Shenzhen.
Or Suntin. Shansan was further north.
The Sintan, S-I-N-T, or S-O-N-T-I-N.
Yep,
Anyway.
it made an impact in the same area, stalled for a few days, went back out over the Gulf of Tonkin, re-intensified, and then moved back west inland again. Just to show a little bit of comparison, this is the Vietnamese forecast track. What I have here on my screen is the JTWC forecast track. You can see similar intensities, but JTWC brings the storm just slightly further south. You'll see the Vietnamese track has it skirting along mainland China's coastline, while this brings it straight over this peninsula, and JTWC's Vietnam landfall slightly further south than what the Vietnamese center is saying as well.
Now, tropical storm 19W, Leepi.
Leepi. Okay, let's go back to Leepi. Peaked as a typhoon yesterday and is starting to get shredded apart by wind shear. Actually, no, not really. It's in, well, 15 knots or so of wind shear. It's marginable, but it's definitely enough to start really chipping away at the storm. Here you can see its satellite appearance definitely deteriorating since yesterday and continued to deteriorate. Its low-level center starting to become exposed. It is going to be another flooding threat, though, for southern Japan, which has already received a lot of rain so far this summer.
Yes, and looking at various live streaming webcams, and I opened with free in a, I think my update around this time yesterday. The rainfall activity is increasing. However, Leepi is located 443 nautical miles southeast of Iwakuni.
Yeah, right now in the JTWC
Japan.
forecast, they say it'll actually bring tropical storm-sustained winds to parts of the southern Japanese island. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
It shows an increasingly disorganized weakening system with deep convection showing signs of becoming elongated and sheared. Microwave image confirms the overall assessment with minimal deep convection stretched out from the center towards the southeast, shadow banding into the low-level circulation in all but the northeastern semicircle. The system remains in a marginal favourable environment, low vertical wind shear, moderate eastward outflow into a very narrow channel, extending into a strong upper level cell to the east. And
Yep.
that cell is still active.
Yeah, it is.
So it is definitely on the weakening trend.
Yeah, for sure. I know there's not really much going on in the Atlantic, but we were getting some questions in the chat, so I just want to pull that up quickly, even though we're both really anticipating nothing developing. This is the Atlantic shot right now. Here's 98L. I don't know why they named it an invest, but non-tropical area of low pressure. It says there might be some availability for development, but odds don't really look very favorable when you look at satellite imagery of the storm, and it's not even listed here anymore because apparently that's how poorly it's performing. Let's see if we can find it on RAM instead. No, you can't. It's not there. But it's void of any convection at this point, so it doesn't really look like it's going to develop at all.
We're looking at the Atlantic one, all right. We'll...
Yeah, and just to show it, none of the models pick up on this storm either. If I go to the North Atlantic wide shot for the models, here's the GFS. It doesn't show it forming.
No.
Euro shows nothing forming. Let's see. I'm not even going to show the I'm not even going to show the CMC. Icon shows nothing showing. I don't even know if it's still here on They dropped it off of ATCF. I guess it's not an invest anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely off there, and the NHC has a low pressure area around 600 miles southeast of Cape Race, Newfoundland.
Yeah, they dropped it from
Yep.
from ATCF at least, and all the satellite imageries. It's just not really looking like it's going to be able to do anything.
Then there's a different picture over in the
That's
Pac
the Eastern
again.
Pacific. Yeah, that's true. 9070 moderate chance of development.
Yeah,
I think that's
currently
98E now. They named it. But it isn't really expected to develop because they think it's going to reach colder waters before it can really do anything.
97E is 11.6 degrees north, 115.6 degrees west, it's 20 knots, and very weak at 1010 millibars. Then we have a look at 98W. Sorry, 98E.
Man, I didn't know
It's
W's went that far.
15.9 degrees north, 127 degrees west, 25 knots, and it's 1011. And they have the one closer to the coast, 70% at day 5.
70% at day 5 for that one now.
Yep.
That's an increase from earlier when it was at 50%. Let me see if I can actually...
40% in the next 48 hours and 70%
That's a significant
5.
increase. Here's the satellite imagery. I'll pull it up on my computer of 97E. It's still a wave, but you can actually, if you look at the less convective cloud tops, you can see some rotation with the system. Not a lot of deep convection, though, that's really rotating, so it's definitely not really something worth being called a tropical cyclone at this point. But compared to 2 days ago when we streamed, convection's more centralized, but there's less of it. So I can see the National Hurricane Center's reasoning with this. If we go to 850 millibar vorticity and go to the Eastern Pacific, here it is right here. This would be 97E. Last time we took a look at it, it was really stretched out, and that just doesn't seem to be the case anymore, which is why they seem to raise chances for development.
And the 850 millibar vorticity.
You know, it
seems to be a bit of activity over there in the East Pac.
It's elongated to the southwest, but it's more centralized than it was 2 days ago when it was a wide flat line going from west to east. It definitely isn't that far anymore. The 98E seems pretty well confined as well. It just probably doesn't have enough convection to back it up. This is what it would be right here. I don't know if you see the satellite imagery. What are you thinking of this system? This would be 9080.
And where's 97?
9070 is going to be to the southeast of it. 9070 is the one with the higher chance of development at this time.
Looks a mess. Can you bring up 97?
97 also looks pretty much like a mess. This is 97.
Right, well,
you'll see in a few seconds that it's really not looking good.
And that's the one closer to the coast, so
yep.
That's the one that's got the 70%.
Yeah, it's got 70% chance of development in 5 days.
That's twice as bad.
I think the difference is...
It really is what...
But it's got some spin with it, so I can see why the National Hurricane Center wants to develop it. You go to the wind shear map mode. Here it is right here. It's in an area of light wind shear. That's going to continue for the next days. It's definitely in favorable sea surface temperatures, so I guess I get what the National Hurricane Center is getting at with that.
Basically, low wind shear, so for both systems.
Yeah, wind shear's low for 98E as well, but it's going to be moving into colder sea surface temperatures. And that's going to hinder its development.
Can you bring up the upper level divergence?
I
know it's one of my favourite, but the upper level does...
the This would be upper
It helps the
divergence.
system. Yeah, upper divergence. What I look for is anything above 30 knots.
Not
And
really
you've
seeing
got
any of that yet.
down the bottom there, what is it, 10, 20 or 20?
That's 10.
Oh,
Here's 20 all the way here, but that's a separate system. So it isn't really looking like there's anything really going yet.
and I thought the East Pack was going to quieten down.
I mean, the tropics just burst to activity as soon as Nathan decided to leave on
Especially
vacation.
the West Pack.
I mean, we're lucky though. Nathan's record didn't got broken finally. It was really close though.
Oh, yes.
No Category 5 or retired storms right now while Nathan's gone. Although, I don't know how bad things are in southern China with Bebinca. I'll pull up satellite imagery of the storm again, see if we can get a newer frame. Do you have any cameras down there, potentially? Just see conditions.
I've got Taiwan, but...
Taiwan's too far away.
Yeah, I know it's too far away.
It's just, I'm really interested to see if some reports come out of this area because this has been torrential rain for almost a week now. And I'm sure, with evacuations of 200,000... Was 200,000 people evacuation with Yagi or this system?
Yagi, 200,000 and 21,000 fishing.
So for a weak system, it still had a lot of impacts with it.
Yes, when I actually called it. Now, I've got this one on the screen, Strat. I'll go to...
Let me pull this up for you.
Hang on.
Where is this exactly? Okay, I remember you typing in chat about this just a little bit earlier. Where is this exactly, just so the chat can find out?
Don Yin... No, now it's frozen. Hang on.
I'm sorry.
There it is. I'm just trying to magnify it. It's one that we covered.
Harbor?
I think that's it. Now,
right.
I think that's northeastern coast of China. This is one of three that we used when we were covering one of the previous systems.
Okay. Which storm
I'm not
was that?
sure what the name
Maria,
was, but
Maria. That's probably Maria.
One of three webcams, and the eye was actually making landfall. And unfortunately, I think my computer might have frozen.
Has it? Let me see.
It has.
It isn't frozen for me.
Alright, I'll just leave it. So that's the last time we saw this live stream cam. The water was considerably higher and rougher.
Yeah, so this is just a place to see comparatively, calmer there in general. I'm really interested to see, I kind of want to make this a project for the next stream to see if we can get, or the next video update, if we can get some footage from down here, because the amount of rain that's happening, I'm interested to see what has happened exactly in the region. I want to hopefully be able to get some information from those cameras that you bring to get some information.
Well, that's what I'm viewing, because I know that the weather conditions over in Japan are deteriorating.
Yeah, because we have Tropical Storm Leepi approaching. Even though the storm's weakening quite quickly itself, it's still going to bring significant rain to a region that's already had much too much rain in the past month and a half.
And then we still have 98W.
Yep. Here's Tropical Storm Leepi right now in the satellite imagery. You can see its satellite condition continues to deteriorate. Convection being weakened and stripped to the east of the low-level circulation and the northeast of it. It looks like it is going to make landfall on the southern Japanese island as a tropical storm and bring tropical storm sustained winds there. So, if you have any cameras from there, that'd be great to see those as well, maybe.
I've got nothing for Vietnam, and I'm still searching for some in the northeastern region of China, but there's just nothing sighted at this point in time.
Do you actually want to go back to Hector a little bit, because we're getting some questions about it again in chat.
Right, Hector.
So here's satellite imagery again of Hector. Storm continues to deteriorate quite quickly in appearance. If you actually look on the stream itself, just to the left of my webcam, you'll be able to see Hector's satellite history from the past 5 days or so. You'll see at the part it's at right now. This is where it got stripped of almost all convection earlier today. It was almost completely diminished to nothing as wind shear took everything off. It had a burst of convection that redeveloped over it, but that seems to be dying off quite quickly at this point.
Okay, I've got 3 floaters from the NOAA side on Hector, and he's still looking healthy.
It's definitely weakened though. If you look right next to my screen right now, you'll see Hector earlier today had almost no convection with it. If I didn't know any better and saw convection redevelop, I would have assumed it wasn't even a tropical cyclone. But if the storm didn't redevelop convection, I'm sure they probably would have actually discontinued it. But it did, and they've kept it a named storm because of that. You can see on David's floaters right here, pretty significantly sheared. You can close to see the center of circulation with Hector right now. You know, things are sheared to the northwest of the system right now. So, you know...
And water vapor?
Do you have water vapor?
I've got water vapor.
Okay.
I think that's water vapor.
You can see, you know, the system just doesn't really have much wet air left with it. You know, dry air's around it. It's starting to really take its toll on the system. More stable air mass in general around it.
So basically no dry air?
Yeah, and, you know, it's interesting to see what will happen with it over the next 12 to 24 hours. You know, it's at this point where maybe it'll dissipate, maybe it won't. And it's interesting in particular because models predict some re-intensification of the system. Yet, you know, weakening has occurred much faster than initially forecast. And earlier today in particular, the storm looked particularly horrid. It's actually right next to my face again. You can see just to the left of it, almost all convection was completely stripped away from the system at some point earlier today before it redeveloped to some extent, and that convection's fading away again right now. So seeing it is, you know, barely holding on to itself at this point.
So that's the current scene.
Yep, that's Hector.
Keeping an eye on 98.
I'm actually
98W.
I'll pull up some 98W satellite imagery right now. Then let's go all the way down here. It's obviously really disorganized at this point because it's part of a pretty broad area of low pressure. If I bring it up here, 98W is going to be on the southern half of this. There's Leepi in the northeastern side of this satellite imagery. You can't really tell in particular that there's something here. If I go to the western Pacific area, go to wind shear, it's in a pretty high area of wind shear right now, but it does have some vorticity associated with it. It's just really stretched out and not confined to any specific area at this point in time. Going to look at some of the computer models, though, I want to see what they have to say about it.
Now we're looking at 98W.
98W. This only the GFS has a specific model for it right now. Surface pressure and 10-meter winds. Let's take a look at that once it loads in. Here we are. This is right about now. It's hard to tell. It doesn't really pick up on it in particular, so you can't really see where it develops. But if you go to the wide shot of the region and go back you will be able to tell. It takes this area right here. This is what's going to be 98W, and brings it in just south of Shanghai, brings it back out again, not as anything notable, but as a system nonetheless. And then, go ahead.
On that model, do you have anything for 99W?
99W. Where's 99? Is there 90W now too?
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
They came on the radar earlier. Two came on the radar yesterday.
Okay, let's see. 90W isn't even on the Western Pacific RAM yet. Here's 99W.
99W. All right, we'll have a look at 99W, and I've got the floaters up on 98W.
If you have the floaters, okay, I have the floaters for 99W.
For 98W, if you...
Yeah, here's 99W. It's east of 98W. It's hard, it's hard to really tell the difference in them right now. But if you look at the models, you can tell they're going to be two distinctly separate systems. Here is what is 98W here. 99W is further south this way. You can see it develops into a tropical storm according to the GFS. Stalls out a bit, becomes a significant typhoon before, and then moves northward away, not impacting land. If we go to the GFS and look at 90W itself here, as soon as it loads in, we'll actually be able to see what they say. The GFS actually peaks this system at, let's see, it peaks it at 90 knots, so not something to scoff at, not particularly extreme, just, an open water typhoon, really. But it does bring it to typhoon status nonetheless. I noticed the GFS also had something for 90W, so let's take a look at that as well. I don't know what it's going to say, though. GFS makes 90W and 99W merge together, so it doesn't take 90W and pick it up into anything.
So we have 98W, winds 15 knots, central pressure is 998. It's located 22.4 degrees north, 128.6, and 99W, it's around 1004 millibars, wind speed 15, and it is a fairway array. It's 9.4 north, 150.5 degrees east.
Yeah, and it's, 98W, like we said, it's pretty disorganized at this point in time. But looking at the forecast intent... Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, mate. And to the east of 99W is 90W at 8.5, 144.1. It's 15 knots and it's 1004.
Yeah, it looks like what the models are trying to say is that it's a battle for dominance between 90W and 99W over which one actually develops. It's going to end up taking the same path, really. It's just to see which one really gets more power over the other one to develop into a system.
And which one do you favour? I think I would go for 98W.
Out of 99W and 90W, which are going to be the ones fighting each other, 90W right now has more convection, but the GFS picks up on 99W. It's interesting.
Okay. Go on.
It's interesting to see 98W though, because if I go to the Western Pacific and bring back up my computer again, here's going to be the Western Pacific Ocean. This is the Euro model. Hector's out on the far right. Leepi's this small system here, south of mainland Japan. Then you have Bebinca just to the northeast of Hainan Island. This broad area of low pressure here in between Leepi and Bebinca is 98W. By 3 days out, Euro develops this into a tropical storm, maybe as a typhoon moving in south of Shanghai, brings it into Shanghai for a day, then moves it back out into the East China Sea and redevelops it. So it's interesting to see that the Euro is trying to develop it like this. If we look at the icon, the German model, It also tries to develop it to some extent, but it doesn't really pick up on it very well. It does pick up on 98 or 90 or 99 or 90W though out here in the Western Pacific as well. So it's interesting to look at the differences between the models right now.
And Strat, look, when we did the live stream earlier, or a few days ago, we were looking at the models, and we mentioned the extended range view about 380 hours.
Yeah, it just normally, I'm just going to put it out there.
With what we're seeing with 98, 99, and 90, is this what we were actually looking at in that model, or is that yet to come?
I think that was further out. That was further out. It's obviously important to know not to really look at those things that far out because models are obviously unpredictable at that long range. Textbook example, that was Noru in the Western Pacific last year. GFS had it for days and days and days being a sub 880 millibar storm, and obviously that never panned out really, so don't really trust anything fully or significantly until you get really within 5 days. That's why with at least, 98W, 99W, right now you can see they both arguably developed within 5 days. GFS brings 90W or 99W within 3 days, actually. It's much more difficult to tell, though, with 98W because of how broad of an area of low pressure it is really at this point. I'll just bring up the GFS run right now just to show that this would be 99W or 90W right here as a tropical storm before 3 days out. And closer to China, you can see a broad area of low pressure that represents 98W.
Strat, I'm just going to cut in. I'm just cited a question from Brian. Brian's channel addressed to Force 13, referring to a cyclone-like storm near Australia. Brian, the weather pattern for this winter I haven't seen for many decades. The Bureau of Meteorology has reissued severe weather warnings for Victoria, Tasmania, and the Snowy Mountains, which is virtually on the New South Wales-Victorian border. We have another series of cold fronts coming across from the southwest. This is one of the coldest records for decades that I've actually gone through. And the Bureau of Meteorology down there in Tasmania has also issued flood warnings, a flood watch. But just keep an eye on our AU channel. But I am aware of the activity to the south of Australia, and some of the lows have been down around 940 millibars.
Yeah. I'm obviously not in the southern hemisphere, so I haven't really been looking at it much, but from what I've heard from you living down there, it's been a pretty hectic year.
It has been very hectic, and I think, as we draw it, in the last, quarter or nearly quarter of the year.
Last quarter, you got like a month left at this point. A month and a week. We're close.
Yeah, 1st of November, the Bureau of Meteorology will issue its tropical cyclone outlook for 2018-19. Close
to the end of your cold fury and close to the start of mine. I really don't want to. I don't want to get back to that time of year, to be honest. Especially when you're the only one that's capable of shoveling the driveway. It's really not an enjoyable experience.
And just off topic, the parts of Queensland and New South Wales are experiencing severe drought. They're actually shipping hay in from Victoria and the state of Western Australia. So that's a little bit of an update on the scene over here in Australia, but I wasn't expecting the Westpac to be so active.
No, we really had a couple of bursts of activity. There's 3 big ones this year. One in early June where we had a train of 3 cyclones that took the same path within a week of each other. Mid last month we had 3 or 4 systems within the span of a week and a half, and now we've had probably like 5 that at least this month so far, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Hector technically being a Western Pacific storm now. So we've had 5 storms within the past 2 weeks in the Western Pacific now, because we also had Zhongdari and Shanshan as well, right before Nathan left. So it's 6 storms this month so far in the Western Pacific, which is kind of crazy to see, really. The activity's really ramped up to a very high level.
And there's no sign of it letting down.
No, if models are anything to go by, we could see at least 2 more storms, which is pretty insane to see.
Yep.
Just because we're a smaller audience tonight, I also would just want to go out of my way to say thank these guys for their active participation. I've noticed, as being the analytics guy, that we've had a lot of chat interaction, a lot of viewer retention through streams, and really a lot of audience interaction in the polls that I've posted. I know the one I posted 2 days ago has almost 500 votes at this point, which is kind of crazy. I just posted those for fun to see what would happen, and multiple of them have gotten hundreds of responses. So that was pretty shocking to see.
And Strat, just picking up on what you just said about the polls, what was the result to the last one, and what was the question?
Let me pull up the last poll then quickly.
Was it how many more storms?
The most recent poll is what people think of activity so far this year, and I was speaking about that, the way I said that, I meant that as worldwide. Worldwide activity up to this point this year. I'll actually quickly pull up Chrome to show you guys that. Here it is right here. How active do you think this year's been? 474 responses, which is really crazy. Really appreciate that. 33% say below average, which, I can get. The Atlantic hasn't really been that exciting this year. Eastern Pacific's had, bursts of activity, though. 58% said average. And I don't really have the numbers to confirm or deny that, but that kind of seems to be the broader consensus. Only 9% say above average, which is nice to see that we don't really have a ton of people saying that. And then we also had this poll down here saying how many storms would form in the Western Pacific in September. Almost 400 votes. That was kind of crazy as well. Considering the way we're seeing things right now, this kind of makes sense. Over 90% of our audience said at least 3 storms would form in the latter half, or in the month of September in the Western Pacific Ocean.
Well, look at what's going on in the Westpac, but Strat, before we go, at the top of the hour,
yep.
Can you bring up the GO-16 satellite imagery? I want to look at the African coast right up to...
The wide shot?
Yeah, up through the Gulf of Mexico.
Alright, let me bring up the Atlantic wide then, and put that on the Chrome tab for you guys to see. It's going to be closer to the top left. Let me see if I can zoom in on it a little bit for you guys. There it is. Probably get another notch zoom in as well.
And whilst you're doing that, I'll pick up another question from Brian's channel. Brian, I will bring up the satellite imagery for that area.
Yeah, and on the stream right now, you'll be able to see the wide shot of the Atlantic right now from west coast of Africa to Gulf of Mexico. People were getting a little bit hyped about that area of interest, the tropical wave off that came off the coast of Africa. people, despite what we were saying that there's obviously too much dry air wasn't going to develop, they were trying to push it. I think it's obvious at the point, just looking at the satellite imagery, that wave doesn't exist anymore. It got completely choked out by dry air. So it really had no chance. That was kind of proven out. You can just see from this cloud mass here, you can see these kind of lighter clouds, the dry air layer going all the way into the Caribbean. You have the satellite imagery right now of that other system that you want to pull up, so I'll put it on the screen for Brian while I find out the Saharan air layer imagery that I want to get as well.
Straight on the screen is the Himawari 8 satellite view of the Solomon Islands, and what I'll do, I will provide some imagery in my next update, which is currently being produced. I'm about halfway through doing the update, so we'll have a look at it. And just quickly, I'll bring up the Papua New Guinea.
Yeah, it seems the normal site I use for Saharan air layer is not working right now, so this is interesting to see. Let's see what the national saying. Would this be it? I mean, this works actually. It just shows how much drier there really is. If I zoom in on this a little bit, we'll be able to get a shot of it. Here it is, quickly. Greens, blues, and yellows and oranges show drier air. You can see that dominating the Atlantic for the most part, the main development region. Especially at the very end, you see a really dry mass of air coming off. This is a few days ago. This is going 3 hours at a time. This is on the 12th. This is the 13th, and you'll see a large air mass start to come off at the very end, right here. And here it is right there. It's a large air mass that's starting to come off of very dry air. And, the northern Atlantic has more moisture in it in general. That's where 98L is, even though it's been dropped by the ATCF and RAM. But those, just goes to show the main development region isn't really ready for activity yet.
So what do you reckon, a couple more weeks? Second week of September?
If models are anything to go by, we probably have until at least the end of August. GFS shot goes out to 16 days. It shows nothing. And this is August 29th. It shows nothing. Euro goes out to 10 days. It shows nothing by August 23rd. It may try to pick up 98L a little bit, but it doesn't really look like it develops on it. So that shows nothing through the 23rd. CMC, it probably shows nothing too. Actually, CMC actually does show nothing. That's a miracle. It shows nothing until the 23rd. NavGem shows nothing. It just seems like the Atlantic isn't really ready yet. And if you look at the image you're actually showing on your screen right now, the odds of development for certain areas, you'll get an even bigger sense for that, because the Atlantic has literally nothing, and the rest of the world has significant areas. What is that? What is that exactly?
Brian, if you're viewing this, mate, I've been following this for nearly a week.
What?
And with what you're seeing, with all that convection, well, there it is, the Tropical Cyclone Formation Probability Guide. You can actually see the
oh my goodness, there is something there. You've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, and it's been there about 5 days now, and I've just looked at the
sorry, what is this
satellite imagery, southern hemisphere, tropical cyclone
You've got to be kidding
formation
me.
probability guide.
I have to ask though, what is this thing in the Bay of Bengal? Is that a glitch? Before we go?
It's been there, actually. They have that deepening, but it's only, we've got to apply caution to all the models. That's my normal position. But Brian, I will cover this in an update. So if you haven't tuned to the AU channel, your support is much appreciated. And the what was it? Papua New Guinea Weather Office. There it is on this Himawawi 8. They've actually got it. And that's over Bougainville Island, Brian, which is, well, naturally it's east of Papua New Guinea, and it's to the northeast of the Solomon Islands. Yeah. And I haven't even had a look at the models, and just quickly, the Bureau of Meteorology. I'm just seeing if they've got anything. No, they don't have anything.
Yeah, we're actually, you know, it's 9:01 now. We're gonna have to head off. So, is there any last words you want to say?
Well, Nathan will now be up in the sky, flying back to his HQ.
Internal operations are back tomorrow.
Yeah, and as we have said, Nathan has been giving some serious thought to the project, and we look forward to hearing what he has got planned. But it's been an experience for both of us,
yeah.
And
it's been worthwhile.
And the response has been overwhelming, and I have no doubt that Nathan will provide an update when he comes back into a live broadcast event. But the support has been fantastic over the last 10 months. But generally, the support across the platforms, it's overwhelming.
And you know, I've really liked doing these streams in particular, just because even though there's major storms going on, it really allows that audience interaction. And see, this has been a less dense stream tonight, but there's been a lot of people that have been here the whole stream, so it's really nice to see a dedicated fan base. We really appreciate you guys. Bring more people around. If you have more friends that are into the stuff, feel free to bring them around. Make sure they at least check out the channel or subscribe to it. I know not as many people use Facebook that are younger adults and teenagers these days, so we of course use Twitter, all that stuff. And maybe consider using Super Chat. That's a thing here, to help us out. We really don't. It's really a non-profit. All of us do this out of volunteer work, just to inform people, and it's always nice to have some help to keep things going, really. Super Chat or Patreon are all options. Link to Patreon is in the description below, as well as all the other links are YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Discord, I saw that question quickly before we go offline. Nathan gets back tomorrow. You have to, I'll type it in the chat for you as well. Message Fool13 at extension 9094 on Discord, or Force13 on Skype to contact Nathan Foy. It's a private server. It's a public server technically, but you have to contact Nathan so he knows you're not like a troll or something, just to get a little bit of trust so you can actually get into the server. That's how you contact him to get in to public server. That's how you get things done. It's what everyone has to do. I did it. What was it? I came the first time I was here was 2 years ago now, back when Skype was still a thing for Force 13.
Yep.
Oh, those were the good days. That's when we did an 104-hour consecutive stream from Matthew. That was huge.
Oh, Matthew,
But
was a...
the era of Discord is much better in my opinion. Makes things a lot easier as a content creator, and just chat rooms in general are much simpler to use, much more organized. So I appreciate having that. But keep in mind everything we said tonight, guys. Of course, make sure to use your local meteorological offices as well. We're just there to provide a non-biased opinion and bring you guys the news as it is. You know, we're just bringing information about the storms, raising the concerns. I think right now, the things people in those areas should be listening to most are Bebinca and Leepi. Those are the two active storms that are threatening land right now. Hector's a fish storm to watch die, really, so we don't need to really worry about as much about that at this point. But, you know, rainstorms are a big threat, so we always need to keep a lookout for them. David's been working really hard with updates over the past 2 weeks, and as someone that really, the type of recording I do is much more strenuous because it takes a lot of pre-recording and stuff, and a lot of pre-footage taking. Having someone like him to do that work is really appreciated. Live events are always a bit of a stress, but it's really nice to be able to interact with the audience, so I really enjoy doing it. I've probably been rambling for way too long now, so we're going to have to cut this off, but alright, let's just say goodbye. Everyone have a great night, alright? Take care.
Bye for now.